For 15 years, this truck was my world. Just me, the engine, and endless miles of empty road. I thought I knew what loneliness was. Then came one stormy night on a dark highway in Tennessee. My headlights caught a figure standing in the rain, and every instinct told me to keep driving. But I stopped. I thought I was being a good Samaritan, helping a stranger. I had no idea I was about to let a devastating secret into my cab. A secret that would not only change my life forever, but lead to a discovery so shocking you'll question everything. Stay with me, because this story, it's real. So let's get into the heart of this story. But before we pull out onto the main road, I want to make sure you are riding along with us for the whole journey. Hit that subscribe button right now, because the stories I have lined up next are going to change the way you see the world. You do not want to miss this. Let's begin. The road is a lonely place. Anyone who tells you otherwise has never spent a week staring at endless miles of asphalt with nothing but the hum of a diesel engine for company. My name is Jack, and for 15 years the cab of my 18-wheeler was my entire world. The damp air tonight was heavy, clinging to the Tennessee landscape as I pushed my rig down Interstate 40 somewhere between Knoxville and Memphis. The wet pavement mirrored the few lonely lights that managed to cut through the thick clouds. This was my life, a series of truck stops, reheated diner food, and old country songs on the radio that did more to deepen the silence than to fill it. I was 35 years old and had grown used to the solitude. In a way, I even preferred it. The road doesn't ask questions. It doesn't judge. It just is. On this particular night, as I navigated a long curve coming out of a gentle climb, my headlights caught something, a figure. A woman standing on the shoulder of the highway. My first thought was the usual one. Someone with a flat tire, maybe a tourist who ran out of gas. But as I got closer, my gut tightened. She had no car, no luggage, nothing. Her face, illuminated for a brief second by my passing lights, was a mask of pure anguish, her eyes swollen. Lost. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. I've seen a lot of things out here on these roads, but the look on her face was different. It was the look of someone who had been completely and utterly broken. Against my better judgment, I slowed the massive truck down its air brakes, hissing in the quiet night. I flipped on my hazard lights and pulled over a safe distance ahead. Climbing down from the cab, I approached her slowly, my boots crunching on the wet gravel. I kept my hands visible, a gesture of peace. The woman looked exhausted, her body slumped with a weariness that went beyond physical fatigue, but she straightened up a little as I got closer, a flicker of dignity fighting through the despair. "Ma'am, you all right?" I asked, my voice calm and steady. She hesitated, taking a shaky breath. Her brown eyes searched mine, looking for a threat, but finding none. Then, in a voice so quiet it was almost carried away by the wind, she said two sentences that hit me harder than any blown tire or missed delivery ever had. "No, I have nowhere to go." In that moment, I wasn't a trucker, and she wasn't a stranger. We were just two lonely souls on a dark highway. My calloused heart, which had been hardened by years on the road, felt a pang of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Compassion. I made a split-second decision, the kind that doesn't come from your brain, but from a deeper place you didn't even know you had. I opened the passenger door, a simple gesture that would reroute the entire map of my life. As she climbed into the cab, bringing the cold night air and a story of profound heartbreak with her, neither of them knew that this was not just a ride to the next town. It was the beginning of a journey that would redefine the meaning of home, and it all started with a single question that hung in the air between us. That question just hung there in the deafening silence of my cab. The only sounds were the rhythmic swish of the wipers against the glass and the low rumble of the engine idling. She sat there clutching her own arm like it was a life raft in a storm. I didn't push. I didn't ask again. Sometimes the loudest thing you can offer a person is your quiet. I just kept my eyes on the road and drove. A few long minutes passed. I reached into the small cooler I kept between the seats and pulled out a bottle of water. Without a word, I offered it to her. She looked at the bottle, then at me, and her guard seemed to soften just a little. She took it with a shaky hand and whispered a thank you. "My name is Renata," she said finally. Her voice was raspy from crying. "I'm Jack," I replied. "You can rest easy. No one's going to hurt you here." We drove on like that for what felt like an hour, just two strangers moving through the dark. I kept the radio off, respecting her space. Then slowly, like she was piecing together a broken vase, she began to talk. The words came out in hesitant fragments at first. She told me she had been kicked out of her own home. Her husband, the man she had built a life with in a small house just outside Nashville, had found someone else. He didn't just tell her he was leaving. He simply packed her a single bag, threw it on the sidewalk, and told her to be gone by the time he got back from work. She worked as a sales associate at a department store. She made enough to help keep the bills paid, but she never imagined being cast aside like that, like a piece of old furniture. I had nowhere to go. She said, her gaze fixed on the passing darkness. Outside the window, I felt like I was nothing, disposable. Her words weren't traumatic. They were just filled with a hollow pain that was all too real. I didn't have any grand words of wisdom to offer. I've never been married myself. I've known the sting of loneliness every single day for 15 years, but I had never known the betrayal of being thrown away by someone you trusted with your whole world. But I recognized the look in her eyes. It was the same look I sometimes saw in my own reflection in the rearview mirror on a long, empty stretch of highway. A profound sense of being alone. I just listened, letting her pour out the story without interruption. As we approached the bright lights of a big pilot truck stop in Vargina, I knew I couldn't just leave her there. "Tonight you can rest here," I said, pointing to the wide, comfortable passenger seat, which reclined all the way back. "I'll take the sleeper bunk in the back. I'm not going to bother you. I just want you to feel safe." She looked at me, and for the first time I saw a flicker of something other than pain in her eyes. It was disbelief mixed with a tiny spark of gratitude. She didn't cry out of sadness this time, but in a quiet, broken way that told me this small act of decency was more than she had expected from the world. As she settled in for the night, a silent understanding passed between us. This was more than just a ride to a truck stop. It was a temporary truce with the cruelty of life, and as I laid in my bunk, listening to the rain tap on the roof, I realized this impromptu arrangement was already starting to feel like a new kind of routine. So what? Do you think? Have you ever seen an act of kindness like that on a lonely road? Or maybe you were the one to receive it. Drop your story down in the comments below, because I truly believe everyone has a story like this one hidden away. I will be reading every single one of them. That impromptu arrangement at the truck stop turned into our new normal. The next morning I asked her if she wanted me to drop her off in the next city, maybe call a women's shelter or a bus station. She thought about it for a long time, staring into a cup of coffee I had bought her from the diner. Her mom had passed away a few years back, and she wasn't close with her father. She had friends, but she knew staying on someone's couch was only a temporary fix, a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Then she looked at me with a quiet determination I hadn't seen before. "If it isn't too much trouble," she asked, "can I stay with you just for a little while until I figure things out?" I just nodded. What started as a rescue mission was slowly becoming a partnership. The first few days were quiet, but then something amazing started to happen. Renata began to find her place in the small world of my truck cab. It started with little things. She would tidy up the dashboard while I was fueling up organizing my mess of receipts and logbooks. Then at my delivery stops, instead of just waiting in the truck, she would get out with me. She'd stand there with the clipboard helping me check the manifest against the pallets of lumber we were hauling down to Birmingham. She didn't know a thing about the trucking business, but she was a quick learner, and she had a knack for dealing with people. The warehouse foremen, who were usually gruff and dismissive, with me would soften up when she'd offer them a polite smile and a good morning. My drop-offs became smoother faster. We crossed most of the deep South that month, from the rolling hills of Alabama to the flat plains of Georgia. We stopped in places like Montgomery and Macon, delivering everything from bags of fertilizer to boxes of machine parts. And through it all, Renata adapted. She never once complained about the heat day, dust, or the long hours. Instead, she would just ask if I was okay, if I'd eaten, if I needed her to grab me a coffee. This simple care, this gentle attention, was something I hadn't realized how much I was missing. It was like living in a black and white movie for 15 years, and then suddenly, someone comes in and starts painting everything in color. One afternoon at a greasy spoon diner off a state route in Georgia, she actually laughed at one of my terrible jokes. It was a real, genuine laugh that filled the entire booth. I realized in that moment that I wasn't just giving a ride to a woman in need anymore. She was giving me something back. Companionship. We started sharing stories about our childhoods, our favorite music, our silly little dreams. The long, silent hours on the road were now filled with conversation. The cab of my truck, which was once my solitary fortress, started to feel like a home. It wasn't just my space anymore. It was becoming ours. The other truckers at the stops started to notice. Some gave me a knowing nod. Others looked on with suspicion, but I didn't care what any of them thought. I just knew that the woman sitting in my passenger seat was no longer the broken soul I had picked up on the side of the road. She was becoming my co-pilot in every sense of the word. One evening, while listening to the radio play a slow country song, she did something that caught me completely off guard. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes about the unspoken trust that was growing between us. That small gesture she made was everything. We were rolling through South Carolina, the sun setting behind the pine trees, when a classic George Strait song came on the radio. It was one of those slow, sad, beautiful songs about love and loss. Out of nowhere, Renata just leaned over and rested, her head on my shoulder. My entire body went stiff. I hadn't felt the warmth of another person like that in so long, I almost forgot what it was like. My heart, which I thought was just a tough old engine part, started beating like a drum. I didn't say anything. I didn't move. I just kept driving, letting the moment hang in the air, soaking it in. I never imagined finding someone like this on the road. She whispered so softly, I could barely hear her over the engine's hum. I just stayed, quiet, but inside, something had cracked wide open. My defenses, my walls, the shell I had built around myself for 15 years, it all started to crumble. From that day on, the unspoken language between us became louder than any words we could say. Our little world inside the truck transformed. It wasn't just a vehicle anymore. She made it a home. She would clean the windows until they sparkled, organize my logbooks, and even put a small air freshener that smelled like vanilla in the cab. The other truckers would see us at the stops, laughing over a shared plate of fries, and I could see the questions in their eyes. Some gave me a thumbs up, others just shook their heads. I didn't care. I knew what we had was real, and it was more valuable than their approval. She was bringing me back to life, one smile at a time. The love between us wasn't some fiery explosion. It was a slow burn built on a foundation of absolute trust. It grew in the quiet moments, in the shared glances, in the way she'd make sure my coffee was just right in the morning. One night we pulled over at a scenic overlook on the Blue Ridge Parkway. The sky was so clear you could see a million stars. The air was crisp and clean. We sat on the edge of the truck, bed our feet dangling in the cool night air. The world felt quiet and peaceful for the first time in a long time. "I have to ask you something," I said, my voice a little shaky. She just looked at me, her eyes reflecting. "The starlight. Do you see me as someone you can trust? I mean really trust. Someone you could actually see yourself staying with?" She smiled a slow, beautiful smile that lit up the darkness. "Jack, you were the first person who extended a hand to me and asked for nothing in return. You showed me kindness when I thought it no longer existed in the world. That means more to me than you will ever know." That night, everything changed. We came together not out of loneliness or need, but because the feeling between yous had grown so big and so strong it had nowhere else to go. It was a natural, beautiful moment born from respect and cemented by trust. From that night on, we weren't just two people sharing a ride. We were a couple of teens facing the world together. And as we drove away from that mountain, overlook under that blanket of stars, we both knew that what we had found was too special to just keep to ourselves. We needed a symbol, something to show the world and each other that this love born on the highway was here to stay forever. We needed that symbol, a promise we could see and touch. It was one thing to feel this love growing inside the steel walls of my truck, but we wanted to declare it, not in a loud way, but in a way that was ours. Around this time, Renata's old spirit really started to shine through. She had this natural talent for talking to people, a warmth that drew you in. She started saying I could sell a few things at the truck stops, blouses or jewelry. I have got an eye for it. And she did. With a little bit of cash we had saved up, she started buying small lots of clothes and trinkets. She'd set up a little display on a folding table next to the rig, and within minutes she would have a small crowd of other drivers, wives and waitresses from the diner gathered around. I would watch her from the cab, my heart swelling with pride. This was not just about making a few extra dollars. This was about her reclaiming her own power, her own independence. It was beautiful to see. One sunny Saturday, we had a long layover in a small town called Good Hope, Georgia. The name felt like a sign. We decided to wander into the town's weekly flea market. It was a world away from the diesel fumes and cracked asphalt we were used to. It was full of life. Tents of every color dotted a huge field. The air smelled like funnel cakes and fresh-cut grass, and a local band was playing bluegrass on a small stage. It felt like a celebration of simple, honest living. As we walked hand in hand through the aisles, we stumbled upon a small stall run by an old man with kind eyes and hands wrinkled from a lifetime of work. He sold simple, handmade silver jewelry. No flashy diamonds, no gaudy gold, just pure, clean silver molded with care. And then we saw them. Two plain silver bands sitting side by side on a piece of black velvet. They were not a match set, but they looked like they belonged together, just like us. I looked at Renata, and she looked at me, and in that moment, no words were needed. This was it. This was our symbol. I turned to her right there among the crowd, and the music, and the smell of popcorn. And I said it. "Are you serious?" she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "I have never been more serious in my life," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I accept," she cried quietly. "We bought the rings right there." The old jeweler must have sensed our story, because he smiled a warm, genuine smile. He insisted on taking a photo of us with his phone standing there under his blue canvas tent. Then he took out a small engraving tool and carefully etched our initials on the inside of each ring, a gift, he said, for seeing true love in a world that often forgets what it looks like. From that day on, we were husband and wife. There was no church, no judge, no piece of paper, but our wedding was more real than any I could imagine. When we got back on the road, I would introduce her to my friends at the stops. "This is my wife, Renata." And she would smile that brilliant smile, a simple silver band on her finger, shining brighter than any diamond. We were a family now bound by a promise made at a flea market. We thought our journey was finally complete, but we had no idea that this new chapter of our life was about to be blessed with a gift. We never saw coming a tiny miracle that would change our destination forever. That little flea market promise changed the whole feeling of the road. My truck, which for so long was a symbol of my loneliness, now felt like a rolling testament to our new life. The miles didn't feel as long anymore. I started taking lighter loads, sticking to routes around Georgia and northern Florida so we could have more downtime. It was no longer just about making deadlines. It was about building a life with the woman I now called my wife. Renata's little business was thriving. She had a list of regular customers at truck stops from Savannah to Jacksonville. She had found her smile again, not just a polite one, but a deep, joyful smile that reached her eyes. Life was simple, but it was good. It felt like we had finally found our rhythm, a perfect harmony between the hum of the engine and the sound of our laughter. But life, as I've learned, always has a way of changing the tune when you least expect it. One day, as we were heading through a stretch of highway near Gainesville, she started to feel sick. I figured it was just a bad burger from a roadside diner we had stopped at earlier. But the sickness didn't go away. It lingered for days. She became sensitive to smells. The familiar scent of diesel, which had been the backdrop of our lives for months now, made her feel nauseous. She would get emotional over the smallest things. One morning she cried just because the sunrise was pretty. I was worried, but I had no idea what was really going on. Finally, after a particularly bad morning, we pulled into a small urgent care clinic in Valdosta. I sat in the waiting room, my leg bouncing with anxiety, staring at faded posters about flu shots. After what felt like an eternity, a kind nurse with a gentle smile called me back. Renata was sitting on the examination table, looking stunned. The nurse looked from her to me, and then she said the words that hit me like a ton of bricks. "Renata, you are pregnant, about 8 weeks along." The world stopped. The humming of the clinic's air conditioner faded away. I just stood there completely mute. Me, a father. The idea was so foreign, so completely outside the realm of what I thought my life would ever be. I looked at Renata's face, a mix of shock and wonder. Then I walked over to her, took her hand in mine, and said with a certainty that came from the deepest part of my soul, "We are going to be okay. I've got you." A few months later, we were parked for the night when my phone rang. It was Renata calling from a payphone at a rest stop where she was stretching her legs. I could hear the tears in her voice, but they were happy tears. "Jack, it's a girl. We are having a little girl." I pulled the truck over to the shoulder right. Then and there, I turned off the engine and just closed my eyes, and I cried. Not sad tears, but tears of pure, unfiltered joy. Me, this tough, road-worn trucker, was crying on the side of the highway because I was going to have a daughter. We decided to name her Luna. Months later, in a simple public hospital in a quiet town in southern Georgia, Luna came into the world. I arrived just a few hours after she was born. When I walked into the room and saw Renata holding that tiny little bundle, I broke down all over again. "She has your eyes," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "She has your stubborn chin," Renata replied, smiling up at me. That moment, holding my daughter for the first time, everything shifted. My calloused hands that had spent years gripping a steering wheel now felt clumsy and huge holding this tiny, perfect human. The truck, my kingdom, my rolling home, suddenly felt impossibly small. It was a place for 2 survivors, but it was no place to raise a child. In that hospital room, a new dream was born. A dream not of open roads and endless horizons, but of 4 walls, a solid roof, and a backyard where our daughter could run and play. That hospital room dream of a house became my new obsession. The open road which had been my freedom for so long. now felt like a cage. We needed roots. We needed a place to call our own a sanctuary for our new little family. But life on the road is a life of constant motion, and putting down roots felt like trying to plant a tree in the middle of a freeway. About a year after Luna was born, another surprise came along. Renata was pregnant again. This time it was a boy. When she told me, I let out a whoop of joy so loud, probably echoed for miles. I pulled the truck over right there on the highway and danced with her on the asphalt under a starry sky. 2 kids, a daughter and a son. My mission was no longer just about survival. It was about building a future. The truck, which had been our lifeboat, was now just a tool. We needed a real home, and we needed it now. The universe must have been listening, because one hot afternoon, while delivering a load of lumber to a small town called 3 Points, Georgia, I struck up a conversation with an old gentleman named Arthur. He was the owner of the lumber yard. Kind man with a warm smile and a firm handshake. As we talked, I mentioned that I was looking for a small piece of land, a place to build a simple house for my growing family. Arthur listened patiently, then a thoughtful look crossed his face. I have a small plot of land just outside of town, he said. It is just sitting there. If you want it, we can talk. I do not need to make a profit. I just want to see a good family. Make a home on it in a world that feels so empty sometimes. It felt like a miracle. A few weeks later, we were standing on that piece of land. It wasn't much, just a dusty plot with a few big oak trees, but to us it was a kingdom. We poured every penny we had saved into it. Every long haul I took was a payment on our dream. Every blouse Renata sold at the truck stops was another brick in our future home. We hired a small local crew, but we did a lot of the work ourselves. I learned how to frame walls and lay flooring. Renata learned how to paint and tile. It was hard, exhausting work, but we never complained. We knew what we were building. The day we finally hung the front door, Renata stood in the doorway and cried. We did it, Jack, she sobbed. We made it. It all started on that highway. And I hugged her tight, my own eyes filled with tears. Our little house was finally finished after 8 long months. It wasn't big or fancy. Just 2 bedrooms, a cozy kitchen, and a small porch where we could sit and watch the sunset. The backyard had a giant oak tree with a tire swing I built for Luna. It was perfect. It was ours. Renata decorated it with so much love and care, using things we found at thrift stores and yard sales. But every single item had a story it had. Meaning, this wasn't just a building made of wood and nails. It was a home built with sweat, hope, and a whole lot of love. I started taking shorter routes, staying close to home. I didn't want to miss a single moment of my kids growing up. The truck that had once been my entire world now sat parked in our dirt driveway, a silent reminder of the journey that brought us here. It had carried us through the storm and delivered us to our safe harbor. Our life had changed completely. The roar of the engine had been replaced by a much sweeter sound. That sweeter sound was the sound of my children's laughter. It filled every corner of our little house, chasing away the last lingering ghosts of my lonely past. The constant hum of my truck's engine was replaced by the pitter-patter of tiny feet on our new wooden floors. Our son Lucas was taking his first wobbly steps, his little hands grabbing onto his mother's legs for support. Our daughter Luna, already a little adventurer, loved to help me in the yard, her bright eyes full of curiosity. She adored my old truck. Sometimes I would lift her up into the driver's seat, and she would pretend to drive, grabbing the giant steering wheel with her small hands. "Daddy, when I grow up, I am going to drive this truck too," she'd say with all the seriousness a 4-year-old could manage. "You sure will, sweetheart," I would tell her. "You can drive it all the way around the world if you want." Our home became a real sanctuary. We painted the walls a cheerful sky blue and hung photos of our journey on the living room wall. There was the picture the old jeweler took of us at the flea market, the day we bought our rings. There was a blurry photo of Luna as a newborn wrapped in a hospital blanket. Each picture was a milestone, a reminder of how far we had come. Renata transformed too. She was no longer just a woman selling clothes at truck stops. She set up a small boutique in a spare room of our house. The women from our new neighborhood loved her style and her warm personality. Her little business blossomed, and our home was often filled with the chatter and laughter of her customers. Our life settled into a beautiful, simple rhythm. I would take short-haul jobs around Georgia and the Florida Panhandle, making sure I was home every night to tuck my kids into bed. On the weekends, we would work in the garden or have picnics under the big oak tree in the backyard. Sometimes in the quiet evenings, we would sit on the front porch, just the two of us, watching the fireflies dance in the twilight. I still cannot believe this is my life, I would say to Renata, my voice filled with awe. And to think it all started with a ride, Renata would reply, her head resting on my shoulder. No, it was fate that guided me to you on that highway, Jack. She was right. The road had been the catalyst, but our love, our family, that was something we had built together brick by brick, laugh by laugh. When my old trucker buddies would call and ask how I was doing, I would tell them with a pride I had never known before. I am married with 2 beautiful kids and a little house that is my own piece of heaven. It was a heaven with a tin roof and a dirt driveway, but it was filled with a love so bright and so new it felt like watching the sunrise every single morning. The truck may have been parked, but my heart was racing faster than it ever had on the open road. It was racing for a different reason now. For the sound of my son learning new words, for the feeling of my daughter's arms wrapped tight around my neck, and for the quiet love of the woman who had turned my solitary road into a beautiful shared journey. And as the years went by, that journey only became richer and more meaningful. And just like that, the years went by. They passed not like roaring freight trains, but like a soft southern breeze through the curtains of our living room on a quiet morning. The house that was once just a dream of wood and nails was now overflowing with life, with memories, and with the kind of joy you can't buy. We decided to have a little celebration one sunny Saturday in May. It was our anniversary. Not the anniversary of the day we met, but the anniversary of the day we stood under that blue canvas tent at the flea market and made a promise with 2 simple silver rings. I came home early from a short haul, my truck loaded not with cargo, but with soda, 2 simple sheet cakes from the grocery store, and bags of candy for the kids. Renata, who could make a feast out of anything, had spent the morning preparing her famous fried chicken potato salad and fresh squeezed lemonade. We invited everyone who had become a part of our story. Our new neighbors were there, of course. So was old Mr. Arthur, who sold us the land. I even tracked down the nurse from the clinic who had told us we were having a baby girl all those years ago. It was a beautiful sight. Our backyard was filled with people laughing and talking. Our daughter Luna, now old enough to have big dreams of her own, ran around in a sparkly princess dress, her laughter mixing with the music from a small radio on the porch. Our son Lucas wore a tiny trucker hat just like mine and followed me everywhere, a miniature version of the man I had become. Renata moved through the crowd, a vision in a simple floral dress, making sure everyone had a plate and a drink, her smile lighting up the entire yard. And as I stood there, watching all of it, a lump formed in my throat. I had to step away for a minute. I walked over to the edge of the yard near the big oak tree and just looked up at the clear blue sky. I wasn't sad. I was overwhelmed with a feeling so powerful it almost brought me to my knees. Gratitude. I thought about the man I used to be, the lonely driver with a hardened heart who only knew the silence of truck stops and the endless gray of the highway. I thought about that dark rainy night on Interstate 40. I could still see her face in my mind's eye. The lost broken woman standing on the side of the road. And then I thought about the incredible journey that followed. Renata came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. I turned to face her, my eyes wet with tears. "I am just thinking about how I am the luckiest man in the entire world." She smiled that smile that still made my heart skip a beat. "We just found each other, Jack. The rest of this, all of this, we built it together." I looked into her eyes, the same. Eyes that had looked so lost on the highway, now shining with love and strength. "You are my home, Renata," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Wherever we are, you are my home." We just stood there holding each other in a silent embrace, a quiet promise that this love we had built would not just be for us. It would become a legacy, a story to be passed down, a testament to the fact that sometimes the greatest treasures are found when you are most lost. All right, we are getting near the end of our road here. But before we get to our final destination, if this story has touched your heart in any way, do me a small favor and hit that like button. It is a simple click for you, but it tells the world that stories of kindness and hope still matter. It costs you nothing. Thanks. Now let's continue. Legacy we started building in our backyard that day, it wasn't just for us. It grew and blossomed like the old oak tree we had our picnics under. The years passed in a comfortable blur of school plays, scraped knees birthday parties, and quiet evenings on the porch. Our little house was filled to the brim with life. Luna, that little girl in the princess dress, she grew up to be a teacher in the very town we had made our home. She had a heart full of patience and a passion for helping kids find their way, just like her mother had helped me find mine. And Lucas, my little co-pilot, who wore the tiny trucker hat, he fell in love with engines and grease. He opened his own mechanic shop right across the street from our house, his skilled hands fixing the cars and trucks of our neighbors. He had my love for machines, but he had his mother's kind and steady way with people. As for me, my hair turned white and the long roads finally called for a rest. I officially retired from trucking, but I could never bring myself to sell the old rig. It sits in the garage, now polished and clean, a monument to the best years of my life. Sometimes on a quiet afternoon, I will climb up into the cab. I will sit in the driver's seat, close my eyes, and just breathe. I can still smell the faint scent of Renata's vanilla air freshener. I can almost feel the rumble of the engine and see the endless miles of highway stretching out before me. And in my mind's eye, I can always see Renata just as she was at first. Night, her smile just beginning to break through the sadness. Renata with her own hair, now the color of soft silver, stayed as active as ever. Her little boutique was a town staple, and her greatest joy was our grandchildren, who would fill our house with chaos and laughter on the weekends. Her life's work was our family, and she was the sun we all orbited around. People would sometimes ask us what the secret was to a love like ours, one that started in such a strange way and lasted for so long. Renata always had the simplest, most beautiful answer. We just never gave up on each other, that is all. And I would always add my 2 cents. The road gave me a living, but Renata, she gave me a life. Together, we grew old side by side, harvesting the beautiful fruits of a love that was born from chance, but nurtured with respect, dedication, and a whole lot of faith. And even now, when our steps are a little slower and our hands are a little more wrinkled, all it takes is one look, one shared glance across the dinner table, and we are right back there. 2 lonely souls on a dark highway, finding in each other not just a ride, but a destination. The true long haul was never about the miles on the road. It was about the journey of a lifetime we were blessed enough to share together. Thank you for taking this journey with me today. It means a lot that you stayed for the whole story. Remember to subscribe so you do not miss the next one we have waiting for you. Until then, keep your eyes open for the magic in your own life. I will see you on the next one.